This week on Quality Digest Live, we'll chat with Randy Groover of Boeing and the CMSC about the latest developments in metrology certification.
Plus, lean, zombies, and naked emperors. Oh my, that and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is sponsored by Olympus, specializing in easy-to-use microimaging and metrology systems that provide the measurement and images you need.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for April 3rd, 2015. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. So for all you Shingo fans out there, listen up. The 27th Annual International Shingo Conference is occurring early next month in Provo, Utah. Shigeo Shingo, of course, is one of the true giants in our industry, a philosopher of quality who is largely responsible for the codification and promotion of the Toyota production system here in the West. Lean and its various principles and tools, such as the Gemba Walk, just-in-time, pool systems, Poka-yoke, and single-minute exchange of dies were all discovered or significantly advanced by the work of Shingo. In 1988, Shingo was awarded an honorary Doctor of Management degree from Utah State University. That year also saw the birth of the Shingo Prize for Excellence in Manufacturing, which is now known as the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence to reflect its broader mission. A year later, in 1989, came the first Shingo International Conference. So, what are you going to see at this year's conference? Well, lots of conversations about lean, of course, as well as a number of interesting presentations, including ones from QD contributors Karen Martin and Bruce Hamilton. And Dirk, you're going to have more about Bruce later in the show. You'll also have benchmarking opportunities galore as leading lean organizations such as Jabil, McKinsey & Company, John Deere, and the Campbell Soup Company, among others, will all be there. Registration is still open, but the conference is now just a bit more than a month away, so you're going to have to act fast if you're planning to attend. Details on how you can register can be found in the story link just below this video screen as always. And of course, Dirk, as you know, all the stories we're going to be covering on today's show are available right down there. So watch them here and then check them out there.
Or go to our YouTube channel.
You can do that as well.
So machines, they're getting smarter, right?
Oh yeah.
You probably have a pretty smart machine in your pocket or your purse, aka your smartphone. Mm-hmm. But as smart machines get smarter, where do ethics come in? Ever think about that? I mean, who is ultimately responsible for the ethics of a smart machine? It's kind of an odd question, but that was the question tackled by a recent Gartner paper. CIOs must act now to ensure smart machines behave ethically. What do they mean, smart machines behave ethically? Well, we'll find out. Gartner steps us through the various permutations of this issue by looking at 5 levels of machine or software smartness and where ethics come in. So the first level, level 0, is non-ethical programming. This is kind of the state of just standard software. So on this level, says Gartner, there are no explicit ethical considerations for the behavior of the technology itself. The technology manufacturer assumes very limited ethical responsibility other than that the technology provides the promised function safely and reliable. So basically, your standard product guarantee. It's going to work the way you say it's going to work. Level 1 is ethical oversight. This is where the deployment and use of technology may have ethical consequences. So smart machines may be used, but it's up to the users what they do with the results. The main ethical responsibility is in the hands of those who use the smart machine. So it's a tool, in other words. So, a scalpel has no ethical responsibility, but the surgeon who holds the scalpel, they have ethical responsibility. Sure. Level 2. Ethical programming. Now here is where it starts to get interesting. So now we're getting into smart devices. So with something like a virtual personal assistant, let's say Apple Siri, for instance, the responsibility for ethical use is shared. Users are responsible for the content of the interactions. They start a search, for instance, but not for the answer they receive. That's the responsibility of the developer. So the designer, says Gartner, is responsible for considering the unintended consequences the technology might have. So, for example, in the past, true story, if you told Siri you would like to jump off a bridge, it would guide you to the nearest bridge. It is now programmed to pick up those signals and refer you to a helpline. And there's actually several sad but okay, dark humorous examples of some of the things that you could ask Siri that really didn't give you an answer that maybe was
helpful,
perhaps the most helpful.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that is a responsibility of developers. Level 3, evolutionary ethical programming. And this has to do with smart machines that learn and evolve. The more a machine learns, the more it departs from its original design, and the more its behavior becomes individual, meaning it becomes harder and harder for developers to really know what a smart machine is going to do. And finally, level 4, machine-developed ethics. And now Gartner doesn't expect smart machines to become self-aware anytime soon. However, level 4 predicts that smart machines will eventually become self-aware. They will need to be raised and taught, and their ethics will evolve. So what does all this mean for developers? Well, it means that they have to be thinking about the ethical implications of their products and their software. Think risk analysis for all of their smart products. We humans have to stay one step ahead of what our products may do. So this is interesting. This is where you're more and more getting smart devices, and particularly in robotics and the virtual personal assistants, you are coming to a situation where the products themselves can adapt to the environment. Now, the way they adapt is that predictable? So if it's not predictable, then you have to have safeguards in place that the device can't accidentally do something that would be harmful. And being able to analyze that before the fact is going to be an interesting problem.
Very much so, very much so. And it's interesting because we live in an age where science fiction has become science very quickly now. And Isaac Asimov talked about these things in the 50s and the 40s with his ethics of robots, right? Right. The rules for what robots could and couldn't do. And you know, we're at the point now where it's really departing science fiction and becoming science. I mean, we have mainstream people like Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates has mentioned, Elon Musk have mentioned this as Steve Wozniak, where this is a problem that we now have to confront because there is an inevitability to the fact that these machines are going to be aware. And what does that mean? What does that mean for the masters of these machines, you and me? And our audience, for instance, is most of you are engineers, and a lot of you are in this space. And all of us are the ones that are going to be really on the front lines of this, understanding this. So this is fascinating stuff. It's a little scary. Maybe it's more than a little scary. But it's stuff that it's interesting that organizations like Gartner are beginning to probe that and what it means mechanically in terms of actually the development of these machines going forward.
And actually Gartner's been looking at this for a while. They actually have articles that go back several years on this. So interesting stuff.
Really interesting stuff. We're going to keep our eye on it, so you can count on us to be looking at it too. All right, well, it's now time for the next installment of the newest regular feature on Quality Digest Daily, Cmsc Corner. Now, this is the place where we chat with members of the Coordinate Metrology Society about the issues confronting portable 3D measurement professionals. The large volume, close tolerance hardware and software tools of coordinate metrology, of course, are invaluable to manufacturing sectors such as aerospace, automotive, medical device, telecommunications, and many, many more. In the segment today, we're going to be joined by Randy Groover, the Coordinate Metrology Society's Certification Committee Chairperson, and Randy also moonlights as an instructor and project manager for the Boeing Company. Randy, welcome to Quality Digest Live.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Dirk. How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
We're doing great there, Randy. Thank you for joining us again. And let's jump right into it now. In your role as Certification Committee Chair for the Coordinate Metrology Society, you've worked closely to develop the group's Level 1 and Level 2 certifications. So can you start by maybe giving us a quick overview of what those two certifications are all about?
Okay, so we began the journey, 2009 now, so it's been several years. It's quite a commitment to develop certifications. A lot of rigor needs to go into the process, and we availed ourselves of the best professional help, reached out to an organization that helped make sure that we were meeting all of our responsibilities with regards to the academic rigor and the process that we use to create it. So we have a level 1, which is a cognitive assessment. So think of it as foundational skills, basic skills. It's a 196 question online assessment. And it really speaks to 5 duty areas: interpreting drawings and design requirements, pre-measurement planning, determining where you're going to put your instrument or hardware or measurement device, or even which technology is best given the environment and circumstances, performing the measurement processes, post-processing of the data, generating the requisite reports are the duty areas, and then not to be excluded is ethics. So great segue with your previous discussion. We do have a code of conduct and behavioral ethics that we have embedded in our certification as well. The level 2 certification last year was the first opportunity for folks to sit for that, and that's a performance-based hands-on assessment. So having attained the level 1 credential, you're then eligible to sit for the, or stand as the case may be, for the level 2 or psychomotor assessment, where you actually use, in the case of last year's launch, was a coordinate measuring machine, so the arms. You use the arm, you measure a series of different measurements on an artifact, and then generate the reports, and we compare that to the model and see how many points you've collected and how they were dispersed, and how well the data set you provide us matches the model.
Now, Randy, CMSC 2015 occurs this July in Hollywood, Florida. What can attendees who are planning to go to CMSC expect to see and do, most importantly, with regard to these certifications at the show?
Well, we always offer, I should say always, now this will be our I think our 3rd year of offering the level 1 assessment, the cognitive assessment. So you will be able to sit for that cognitive assessment at the conference. We offer it throughout the 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, morning and evening sessions or afternoon sessions. So that's available. The ARM PCMM Level 2 certification we also host at the conference. So those will be available. And probably the big news is this year we're going to participate, as we did last year, in the measurement zone out in the exhibition area, and we're going to have a measurement Jeopardy game show, and we will have job duty categories that link to those that we have in our cognitive assessment, with questions that are of a similar look and feel. So you'll be able to test your skill against some of your peers in the Jeopardy format game show environment, and we'll have wildly fabulous prizes.
And Randy, what is the future of this program? I mean, you've mentioned the level 1 certification, level 2 certification. What are the plans beyond that, and as those mature?
So the level 2 certification, the ARM is ready now. It's a year into its availability. The laser tracker is the next hands-on performance level 2 certification that we're developing now. So our goal is to potentially have the level 2 ready for a pilot launch at CMSC 2015. And in a pilot, we would have folks volunteer to test drive the performance assessment with a laser tracker. And then we gather data from that to further refine the process and assessment. So that pilot, if we stay on task, might be available, possibly won't be, but that would be what's new. And then the level 2 is going to grow also to include area scanners, handheld scanners, and post-processing of data.
So eventually you would expect to see all the various types of large volume measurement equipment be part of the level 2 certification, right? You would pick what type of equipment you're going to be tested on?
Yeah, the level 1 assessment is really foundational across the spectrum of measurement devices, and then the hands-on are unique to that particular device or system or technology that you use. And it would cover the whole category that are represented at the CMSC.
Well, Randy, we're getting towards the end here, but before we wrap up, just real quickly, can you give me the benefit statement here? What is the certification important for employers and service providers?
I'll tell you, there's really 4 main points that we like to speak to. One is to identify and recognize those persons, who after careful appraisal and peer review by the committee and with the appropriate time in the field, meet our prerequisites and are able then to stand for the assessment and get through the assessment. That's an important benchmark that establishes your credibility in the field. It provides a basis for weighing the validity of any allegations regarding competencies or data, and that speaks to the ethics piece as well. It really does encourage folks who are early career or new to the field to work towards a certification as a goal and a credential and a level of achievement for them. And then the recertification process absolutely incentivizes folks to stay current in the technologies and attend the conferences, attend trade shows, publish white papers, just stay active in the field. All of these contribute to personal development hours, which are part of the requirements for recertification. So it really does, a certified person is somebody that not only can perform the work well and understands their ethical obligations, but also stay current in the field and in the technology. So really you can, I think, level set that person and have great confidence in their ability to provide you the very, very best data.
Well, Randy Groover of Boeing and the CMSC, thanks for joining us here today, giving us a little oversight on the Level 1 and Level 2 certifications. Randy, we'll see you down the road. We'll definitely see you in Florida this July, and thanks for joining us today.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Randy. Okay, 2 articles this week that pointed out the importance of management participation in the company's quality improvement efforts. And it's not what you think. You're probably thinking that these articles dealt with management not being involved at all. That isn't the case. In Mike Mickelwright's Gemba Walking Dead and Bruce Hamilton's The Emperor's New Huddle Boards, this is a situation where managers think they're doing the right thing, but they aren't. So in Gemba Walking Dead, Mickelwright takes a shot at the old managing by walking around concept.
By the way, he's not saying that management are zombies. You might think from looking at that that he thinks that management are zombies. And some managers may have that eye look, that glazed over look of zombies.
Yeah, but they're really
not. They're
they
alive.
may be looking to eat your brains, but really not. Okay. Mickelwright was taking a shot at the management by walking around concept that was popular in the 70s and 80s. And the idea was that the manager would get out of his or her office and randomly walk the workplace like a zombie, talk to employees, get the lay of the land. You get the idea. But the idea was that by observing events or employee discussions, the manager would be more likely to help improve morale, add a sense of organizational purpose, help improve quality, as opposed to just sitting on the rear end in their office area. The problem, says Mickelwright, is that MBWA, or managing by walking around, ends up being more about the manager than about the process. It's what the manager sees, and it's what the manager decides needs to be worked on. It's random, and it doesn't have a real purpose, like zombies.
Yeah.
Contrast this with, let's say, a Gemba walk, which is structured and led not by what the manager seems appropriate, but by what the experts working on the job and the supervisors managing the process deem as important. It's active, fluid, alive really, and led by the process itself. So while management may think that MBWA is getting involved in the process, it very likely isn't, so good intentions, but perhaps wrong method.
Yep.
Hamilton points out a similar situation in his article, The Emperor's New Huddle Boards. Now, in this case, it's about a company that seems to be doing all the right things. They got huddle boards, A3s, 5S, Kaizen, events, Gemba, walks, charts, graphs, you name it, they've got it. Mm-hmm. And even better, They can show that performance metrics like their 5S rating and corporate maturity scores are steadily improving. Sounds great, right? But in Hamilton's tour of the factory, even though he did see all those things, there seemed to be no associated outcomes. Employees were just going through the motions and not creating change. So where is the problem solving, asks Hamilton. Now, the folks in management blamed the lack of problem solving with employees not being on board with what the company was trying to do. Hamilton's assessment was that management wasn't doing enough. In fact, he told them to their faces, and these are Hamilton's words, quotes, "The responsibility for changing that culture resides in this room. My recommendation is that your management team reevaluate your roles and participation to create a culture that's more favorable to improvement." So, the common thread in both these articles is management doing the wrong thing. Now, we could just sagely nod our heads and go,
we do.
Yeah, typical management screw up. But in my opinion, there's more to it than this. Even Micklewright, more to this than what even Micklewright or Hamilton are pointing out. Yeah, management dropped the ball or did the wrong thing. That happens a lot. We all see it. But I think an important question that we often ignore, and by we I mean the cynical observer, is why was management trying MBWA? Why was management trying 5S or huddle boards or A3s or Kaizen and so forth? Why were they trying that? Well, they're trying to improve the process. They have the same goal but different functions as the frontline people do. Do the best they can with the tools they have. And I think this is really a huge point that is often overlooked when we look at the failure of management. Management is always cast in a negative light, right? Think buffoons or uncaring overlords or cigar chomping fat cats with their feet up on the desk. That isn't the case, I don't think. Matter of fact, I think that is actually rarely the case. Managers are people. Matter of fact, very often managers at one time were frontline people. Yeah. What, did they have a lobotomy when they became a manager? I don't think so. They're the same people doing a different job. I want to ask you, what do you think makes a frustrated employee?
Not being able to solve issues, not being able to make things better.
Sure, and why might some contribute to them? What might contribute to some of that? I mean, part of it, I can think of maybe work environment, lack of training.
Not having ideas that are able to be forwarded or pushed through.
Right, leadership.
Yeah.
And when I said employee just then, what were you thinking of when I said employee?
Well, yeah, front rank person.
I was talking about a manager.
Oh, you're talking about manager, okay. See.
Right? Same problems. Yeah. People don't realize. Manager, they got the same issues. They got a work environment. They may have lack of instruction on how to do 5S, A3s, total quality improvement, all that the right way. They are operating in the same type of situation as frontline people are very often. The real issue in a lot of these situations is not that management are bad people. It's that there's a lack of proper communication between the frontline people and management on what the issues actually are. And I think very often this comes down to not bad managers or bad people, but people who don't know how to do their job right. Just as you have frontline people who may not be properly trained in how to do their job right, good people don't know how to do their job right, you can have managers in the same situation. I think we're going to have Kelly Graves, our organizational psychologist, is going to be talking about this in a later show. But we're going to come back to this because I think it's a big deal. Yeah,
and the other thing real quick is that visuality is always talked about very much. And what the case is visuality is great, you need it, but in many cases it doesn't substitute for real change. You know, both those stories, they talked about how things looked good. And we always talk about visuality and lean, but it's more than just how it visually looks. It's about whether it's really working or not. That's the key.
Okay. If your company has a CMM and you do your own part measurement programming, the next segment is most likely for you. Yep. Creating CMM measurement programs, if any of you have ever done it or seen it done, often take a lot of hours. A lot of hours go into developing a part program for a CMM, and this can cause production cycles to be held up. But if you have software that works directly from a model-based definition to automatically create your part measurement program, you can drastically decrease the programming time. And in fact, it can decrease it from hours to just minutes. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about just that technology with our guest, Gene Hans, CMM product specialist from Mitutoyo. Morning, Gene.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine.
All right. Okay, well, just real quick, can you describe the typical process that a CMM programmer usually goes through to set up a part measurement program?
Well, the typical process would be one of two ways. If they're working with a hard copy paper print, it's very time consuming that you're doing one dimension, one datum structure at a time at the CMM, or if you're a very good programmer with an online editor, not actually measuring the part. But both of those methods are very time consuming and are subject to making data entry errors. Another method is if you do have a CAD model and you're online at the CMM, you'll actually be selecting features off the CAD model as it measures the part and then entering in datum sets and or tolerance information. So it's still a little bit time consuming. That is probably the two most common ways, and you can do either method offline or online, but it's still very time consuming.
So Gene, what does the software do in place of that procedure?
Well, the software that can take the CAD model and take a lot of the bulk of automatically programming the part from start to finish. That is, it knows all the GD&T information, it knows all the tolerance information. All the operator needs to give additional information is what CMM am I going to measure it on, what are the parameters that CMM works with, what sensor technology does it incorporate, and then let the software read through the CAD model and determine the best, most efficient way to measure and tolerance that part.
So when you said one of the inputs from the programmer is the type of CMM or the model of CMM or whatever it's on, so the software understands the different constraints of different CMMs?
Well, you can have the same exact model CMM configured differently with different sensor technology. So you not only have to have the CMMs themselves system configured, but down to the sensor that's incorporated. One model machine might have a scanning probe, one may only have a touch probe.
Okay. So, offline, and we should mention, obviously, you're with Mitutoyo, and we're talking about Mitutoyo, that's software that does this. But offline, we've talked about how this software can be used on any CMM and not just let's say Mitutoyo equipment. So, for me, the question is, what is the common element that makes this possible? How can, without knowing the ins and outs of some other manufacturer's CMM, how can this software create a parts program for some other manufacturer?
Well, the avenue that we would use would be in conjunction with our current CAD-based programming software would be a DEMAS part program. We can know what the machine configuration is from any target machine and then program around it that way. And then our part program would then be exported out to a DEMAS part program.
Okay, so the common element here is DEMAS, is that right?
Right, for a non-Mitutoyo CMM.
For a non-Mitutoyo CMM. Okay, all right. And when we talk about, I think I mentioned in the introduction, being able to cut down the amount of time it takes to do program a part. So what kind of time savings are you guys seeing with the software version versus doing it manually?
Well, we have seen in testing and actual part demonstrations, it being taken anywhere from 50% up to 95% time savings. It just depends a lot on how much information is actually contained within the CAD model, because CAD models are subject to having things left off, like for instance, a missed datum. And luckily the software that we're incorporating will either let you reload a updated CAD model that has a correction to it, or will allow you to make the correction with our project utilizing a CAD model missing that datum feature.
Okay, well, Gene Hans, CMM product manager for Mitutoyo. You and I are actually going to be on a webinar next Thursday, April 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, where we're going to be talking about just this topic. We're going to get to it in a lot more detail. 1 hour webinar that's going to deal with how to reduce your CMM programming time up to 95%, as you just mentioned. And again, that is on next Thursday, April 9th, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And that will be Gene here with us, and I'll be hosting, and Gene's will be providing the brains, and I'll just be providing the questions. And Gene, thanks for joining us here this morning.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we'll see you next Thursday.
We'll see you on Thursday. Thanks, Gene. And sign up for that one. Look out for your emails as well. If you haven't registered for it yet, be sure to do it. You can also do it, I think, through the there's a link.
Yeah,
right
the link
our
below the player page will actually take you to the registration page for the webinar.
That's right. Okay. Well, we're coming up to the end of the show, but what would a Quality Digest Live be without the tweet of the week? And this one comes from Twitter user Lalit Bojwani, I believe is the name, who is quoting writer and self-appointed leadership freak Dan Rockwell, who says, "Explaining what you don't want is the easy part." Yes, it is.
Yes.
Well said, Lalit and Dan.
I can't tell you what I want, but I don't want that.
I know I don't want that.
I don't want that.
And as always, for more great tweets on management, leadership, quality, and a lot more, be sure to check us out on Twitter at Quality Digest. All right, well, that is our show. But before we close, we'd like to offer our thanks to this week's sponsor, Olympus. Discover another dimension in microimaging and metrology with test, measurement, inspection, and imaging instruments designed for high precision quality control and R&D. Olympus engineered solutions enhance quality and productivity in industrial markets around the world. For more information, click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player screen.
All right, well, that ends today's show. Thanks,
Randy
Groover from Cmsc and Boeing, and also Gene Hans from Mitutoyo being with us here on the show. And remember, if you have a CMM and you do CMM programming and you want to speed up how fast that takes place, you want to go to that webinar, the Mitutoyo webinar, Thursday, April 9th, 2 p.m. Eastern, how to reduce your CMM programming time up to 95%. Link is underneath the player page. Click on it and speed up your CMM programming. There you go. Well, thanks for joining us today.
That's right.
We'll see you next week.
You guys all have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
So long.
Bye.